Hello everyone, it is MTG Nerds United, or Delectable as they call me on Tapped Out, or Jake as they call me everywhere else. So today I have a deck tech for you guys of one of a decks of my creation. Is a standard deck, is very budget friendly, coming in at only about $30, and I think you guys will really like it. So let's take a look. It is mono blue aggro. Now, this isn't the typical standard mono blue aggro that you are used to. This is not mud. Very different from Mono Blue Devotion. I call it Mono Blue Flyers. Why? Well, we run a total of, I believe, 28 flyers in the deck, so that's pretty self-explanatory, I'd say. And we have a very, very aggressive curve coming out at a total of 20 cards that either cost 0 or 1 to play. So you can see how we can get very aggressive very quickly. Now I'll start off with the mana base. We run 20 lands. We run 16 basic islands, pretty old islands, and then 4 Darksteel Citadel, because we run the Ensoul Artifact combo with different cards in this deck. So a turn 2 indestructible 5/5 creature is pretty awesome, especially if we can get so it can attack. Now, I'll just start off. I'm going to go by converted mana cost and just go up. So, to start off, we have a playset of Ornithopter. So I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with it. It got reprinted in M15. It costs 0 to play, is a 0/2 flying creature. Now, that might not sound that good, but you have to think. This card, you will see later as we keep progressing with the cards in this deck, has so much synergy with so many cards in the deck. Not to mention, paired with Ensoul Artifact, it can become a 5/5 flyer on turn 2, which can be pretty hard to handle, and if it's not dealt with, it will just beat you, basically. Next, we have 3 copies of Void Stare, printed in M15. I can't tell how bad the glare is on this, I'm really sorry, guys. 1 mana, return target non-land permanent to a summoner's hand at sorcery speed. So that's pretty good. If it was at instant speed, it would be great, but this is just a great card. We can remove any blockers that they leave behind. Maybe a Stormbreath Dragon that was in our way that we need to push through that last little bit of damage. Or, it does say non-land permanent, so against Mono Black Devotion, bouncing a Underworld Connections is just really nice. Next, we have 3 copies of Springleaf Drum. Again, another target for Ensoul Artifact, and this can really help us pump out our creatures. We can draw almost our entire hand, and potentially our entire hand, on turn 2 in some cases. And that's just really sick. Now, to start off the combos with Ornithopter, we have Fairy Imposter. Some of you may not be familiar with this card. It is a sweet little 1-drop from Return to Ravnica, and it is a flying 2/1, which is really good on its own, but then it has this little clause. It says, whenever Fairy Imposter enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you return another target creature to its owner's hand. Now, that would normally be a problem if not for the fact that we run 16 1-drops and Ornithopter, which we can return to our hands and then recast it instantly or hold it back to do more shenanigans with it later with a fun little angel we have in this deck. Then we have a playset of Cloudfin Raptor. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the card, Mono Blue Devotion. 1-drop flyer that evolves whenever you cast a creature that has a higher power or toughness than its. So this guy's really good. We can evolve him turn 1 with Ornithopter, and that can be just a really fun time. Making him just a, I've had him up to a 3/4, I believe is the best, but just a 2/3 beater or even a 1/2 beater is in the air can be a threat pretty fast. Then, what I would say is the weakest card in the deck, we have 4 Hypnotic Sirens. So, this basically is just a 1/1 flyer, is what it's in the deck for. Its Hypnotic Siren is from Born of the Gods, I believe, is a 1-drop flying that has Bestow, but its Bestow cost is 7. However, if we ever get the mana to get there, we can bestow it and control target enchanted creature, and that creature would get +1/+1 in flying. Then we have 4 Judge's Familiar. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this card as well. Awesome little card from Return to Ravnica. You can cast either white or blue to pay it. So, obviously we're casting it for blue. I suppose if you want to splash white, that would work. I've actually thought about that, but that would obviously raise the price of this deck. But just familiar, it is a 1/1 flyer, and you can sacrifice it to counter target instant or sorcery spell. So this can really put our opponents off their tempo. We can sacrifice it and counter a spot removal spell if they forget about that, which they do more often than you would think. So he's just really sweet. Now, one of my favorite cards in the deck, Soul Artifact. So if you have not had the chance to read this card yet, it was printed in M15. It is a enchantment aura that costs 1 in the blue to play. It is an uncommon and has Enchant Artifact. Enchant Artifact. The enchanted artifact is a creature with base power and toughness 5/5 in addition to its other types. Now, we run a total of, I believe, 13 artifacts mainboard. So that is a total of 13 targets, and our ideal targets will be Ornithopter and Darksteel Citadel, because that either gives us a 5/5 flyer on turn 2 potentially, or a 5/5 indestructible creature, which is just very hard to deal with for most decks unless you have Enchantment Hate or something like Detention Sphere. Then we have a playset of Military Intelligence, another awesome card from M15. So this is an enchantment, just stays on the battlefield, 1 in the blue, that has whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. Obviously, the idea behind this deck is just to flood the board and overwhelm the opponents with creatures that they won't be able to block, because in this meta there are not many creatures with flying that are very prevalent beyond Stormbreath Dragon and things of that nature. So this card gets serious card advantage really early. We can start even on turn 2 if we drop any of our 1-drops and an Ornithopter on turn 1. Then this beauty, Illusory Angel. Some people say vanilla creatures aren't that good. Well, this isn't really vanilla because flying, but it is above the curve. It costs 2 in the blue to play, and it is a 4/4 flyer. Sounds good, right? It is, but it has a downside. Cast Illusory Angel only if you've cast another spell this turn. This is another case where Ornithopter comes in handy. We can, after we returned it to our hand with perhaps Fairy Imposter, we can hold it in our hand if we have that Illusory Angel so that we can play it and then cast the Angel, which we can potentially do on turn 2, and a turn 2 4/4 flyer is a lot better of a beater than you would expect. Then our final card, we have 2 copies of Hall of Triumph. Very solid card. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color. It's a legendary artifact, so we can only have 1 on the battlefield. That is important to remember. It costs 3, and whenever it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1. Very simple, very good. Can easily make the difference of a game. Now, that is the main deck. It is pretty self-explanatory. I believe is a very fun and effective deck to run. I have done very well with it at FNM. I got first the first time running it, and on game day I got I didn't place due to a misplay on my part against Esper Control, which was unfortunate. However, those things happen, so I will be testing this more in time to come, and I will let you guys know how that go if you go and check the deck out on Tapped Out, which I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, moving on to the sideboard. Sideboards, this is tailored to my metagame, so you'll have to tailor your sideboard to your own if you choose to build this deck, which I encourage because it's a very fun deck to run and can catch people off guard, and you will not be sinking your wallet into it, so it is not a big investment at all. So I'm just going to do this one by how many copies of said card I run in the build, I believe. So I will start out at just my cards that I have 1 copy of. So I run a 4th copy of Void Snare in the sideboard. You guys have already heard of it. It actually comes in a lot more than you think. One of the prime targets for sideboarding to take out is Springleaf Drum. It helps push our deck along but is not needed. So that is often a prime target if you're ever wondering what you need to sideboard out. Then we have 2 copies of Hour of Need. This is a sweet little card from Born of the Gods, or Journey into Next. I get those 2 confused, the symbols I mean. But it is an instant that costs 2 in the blue to play, and it says exile any number of target creatures. It has Strive as well, so you can pay 1 and a blue extra to cast it on extra target. And it says exile any number of target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, his controller puts a 4/4 blue Sphinx creature token with flying onto a battlefield. So this is actually pretty sweet because in response to an opponent's removal spell, we can just cast this, exile our creature, and probably, in most cases, get a bigger beater than we had before. So that is really sick. Then I have 2 copies of Bluster Squall. This actually used to be in the main board instead of Void Snare, but I found Void Snare to be much better. Thank you for that suggestion, some tapped out user whose name I cannot remember. But Bluster Squall costs 1 blue, and it is an instant, and it just taps target creature you don't control. And it also has overloads, tap down all their creatures. So this works well against other aggro decks. If you need to tap down a blocker or anything like that, it is just a very solid card. Now, onto stuff that is really the base of the sideboard, what we really want. So I have 3 copies of Dispel, just counter target instant spell. Only at 1 blue mana, this is very easy for us to hit, and we'll be able to counter spot removal, and you would not normally expect a deck like this to run counter spells, so most decks don't expect it, and then they get their Doomblade or what have you countered. Then we have 3 copies of Syncopate. Now, Syncopate is fairly good, however I'm thinking of replacing it with Gainsay, but for now I will read Syncopate, what it does to you. It costs blue and X, and is an instant counter-target spell unless its controller pays X. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So, very good. This actually helps me in my game against Esper Control because he had Thoughtseize me, he knew I had it, and I just held this in hand, and he was not able to Revelation because he knew I had this in the mana to counter it for any decent number that he were to cast it for. Now, finally, I have 4 copies of Rapid Hybridization. Very nice card. Removal is very good for us. In any deck, I believe, removal is key. So, obviously, I try to run some in my sideboard since I don't run any main board. And it is an instant, costs 1 blue, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. That creature's controller puts a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token onto a battlefield. Now, 1, you get to put a green frog lizard onto a battlefield, so that's awesome. But beyond that, you can use this card in a variety of ways. You can use it to remove big creatures if you need to kill a Pelucanos or Stormbreath Dragon or something like that. It works in that way. Or you can use it on your own creatures when they try to spot removal it. Sorry, guys. But that is the deck. It has a very good matchup against most decks in the format. Mid-range decks pretty much cannot keep up with the aggro that this deck presents. It is too fast, does not have blockers. Red-green monsters is a particularly bad matchup for their part. It's very good for us. Other aggro decks, it's just a race, typically try to out-aggro them, and it doesn't come down to who has the better blocker or anything like that usually because, like I said, flyers are not very prevalent in the format, so we can usually just fly over our opponents and not worry about our life total too much. And Control is honestly another race. We can outrace them before they can hit their Supreme Verdict or anything like that, and if you play it smart, you can get great card advantage off of military intelligence and still have close to a full hand when they verdict you. So Control is not an awful matchup for us, you just have to play it very smartly. And that's pretty much it. I will be showing you guys some gameplay soon. I might attempt to shoot some live like this, which is my first live video. If you go on my channel, if you're coming over from the TCG community, you can check out my channel. I usually do some gameplay on this site called untapped.in and film deck techs on tappedout.com. And so I will probably be shooting some gameplay for you guys either on untapped.in or in real life against maybe a deck like White Weenies or something like that. I'll try to get a variety of matchups going if I can. But for now, that is it. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have not already, I would really appreciate if you subscribe below. I'm a very small channel and would like to increase my size and possibly start filming more and more frequently. And yeah, if you like the video, give it a like, share it with any of your friends that play Magic the Gathering or anything like that, and I hope you might consider building this deck and running it at your local FNM. That's pretty much it, guys. I will see you guys later. See ya!